The BRICS nations are getting aggressively off the dollar. Global usage of the dollar is plummeting. And, this means that the U.S. empire, which is based on the globe using the U.S. dollar, is disintegrating. Without that, the income that comes from being the global bank, you lose a huge amount of cash that comes into the coffers of Washington. And, it's a Ponzi scheme. And when the Ponzi scheme only works if there's people constantly who believe in the Ponzi scheme and who support the Ponzi scheme. Once people realize, oh my God, this is a Ponzi scheme, and they leave, the whole thing collapses rapidly, like at the end of any empire. And that's not the stage we're at now. The U.S. empire, the U.S. dollar empire, is the last inning of a massive Ponzi scheme that's been going on for 50, 60 years. And when it collapses, it'll happen like building number 7. It'll just be free falling in its own space. And everyone will wonder, how did that happen? It was so sudden. They'll make up some excuses, but it'll be quick and devastating.
The U.S. dollar's decline signals a broader collapse of the American empire, a catastrophic event that will catch many off guard, according to Max Keiser's recent warning. He asserts that those who fail to embrace Bitcoin will find themselves on the losing side when this collapse occurs suddenly and violently. Keiser's analysis of the global financial system reveals deep-rooted flaws, with Bitcoin emerging as the sole solution to this broken paradigm. Unlike traditional currencies controlled by central banks, Bitcoin offers genuine financial freedom through its decentralized structure, shielding it from manipulation and providing an alternative to the failing system. Keiser's insights into the apprehension of central banks worldwide towards Bitcoin underscore its perceived threat to their control over the financial landscape. As more individuals adopt Bitcoin, the power of central banks diminishes, prompting them to resist and attempt to regulate its influence. Keiser's message emphasizes the importance of understanding Bitcoin not only as an alternative but as an inevitable progression in the evolution of global finance. By staying informed on these developments, individuals can position themselves for the transformative changes ahead and navigate the shifting financial landscape with greater confidence.
Stop. You don't have time. Don't miss out this 2025 bull run. Educate yourself first ahead of the crowd. We have created the ultimate step-by-step crypto cheat guide that will guide you this bull run. Unlock the secrets of crypto and make smarter investments today. Now by clicking on the link below to get your exclusive copy just under $10.
So if freedom of speech and freedom of having uncensorable money are power pursue, the same thing. We when we do a transaction, you and I, peer to peer, it should be uncensored. There shouldn't be an intermediary telling us what to do with that transaction, just like there should not be an intermediary telling us what to say to each other. And so Bitcoin is to money what the First Amendment is to free speech. And it's without it, you can't even have free speech, because if all the channels of speech are controlled by centralized corporations with an agenda, then you don't have freedom of money or free speech. If you fix the money and adopt Bitcoin, which is uncensorable and unconfiscatable, then free speech and civil rights and everything else comes on top of that. But fix the money first, and then you can build a society that reflects economic freedom, freedom of speech, freedom to worship, etc. It's freedom comes from freedom of transaction, freedom of money. And only Bitcoin offers that because it separates state from money. I mean, the history of money, essentially, is within the last few hundred years, is that it is something created by the state, right? The state typically has a monopoly on creating money, and they therefore have the ability to use that printing press to achieve an economic agenda, which may or may not be in tune with the democratic wishes of the population. I think in America, when you see outcry about money being sent to Ukraine, for example, well, the government prints the money. I mean, and no one's going to stop them. They can print it and ship it to Ukraine. Now, what we're seeing now is that, of course, all that money ends up causing inflation, and then the inflation is bankrupting the middle class, and people are outraged, and they say, stop sending money to Ukraine. But to get more to the point, they should be protesting about getting rid of fiat money and adopting Bitcoin, as we do in El Salvador, and you too can enjoy the Salvadoran miracle. It's a circular Bitcoin economy. It's all in Bitcoin. I mean, you can just use Bitcoin your entire life in El Salvador if you want. The adoption rate is increasing every month, every year, and but if you can do it now. So in Bitcoin Beach, my friend Mike Peterson of Bitcoin Beach, he started the Bitcoin revolution in El Zonte, El Salvador, and the circular economy in El Zonte by giving all the pupusa sellers and everybody in town some free Bitcoin. And they said, just transact in Bitcoin, because the surfers that were arriving in El Zonte, they had different currencies from different countries, and there was no way for the local business people to accept that foreign money, and they don't take credit cards, and they're unbanked. So these guys would have to go 20 miles down the road to an ATM and try to get cash, and it was very cumbersome. But on a Bitcoin standard, it doesn't matter where you come from, or any country, any currency. If you have a Bitcoin, you can transact because the local commercial people take Bitcoin, and it's an instantaneous transaction, and there's nobody who's going to stop them. You cannot interrupt or censor that transaction. The U.S. is now at the back of the queue. They're no longer the shining city on the hill. It's a fucking zoned out, fentanyl addicted, homeless person, on the parking lot dying from, whatever. That's like the U.S. is now the place to leave. It's a shithole. It's the banana republic. When the President Bukele gave his recent speech to CPAC, he was talking about inflation in the U.S. and how America is now monetizing their own debt. America prints money to buy its own debt because nobody else in the world wants to buy American debt. It's called debt monetization. And back 50 years ago, people in the U.S. would look at Central America and say, ha ha, you have to buy your own debt. You're a banana republic. And so here you have the president of El Salvador lecturing people in Washington at CPAC about the fact that you guys are now monetizing your own debt. I suggested to the president, as the Bitcoin advisor to the president, that he should include a line in CPAC that said, "Who's the banana republic now, bitch?" But he opted not to use that phraseology, sadly. I think it would have gone viral. But like everything I've suggested to the president so far in my 2 years here, he has pretty much rejected every one of my suggestions. But nevertheless, I keep trying. Well, two answers. Number one, El Salvador is solving a big problem for America on the southern border. Their southern border is out of control. And they look at El Salvador and they notice that less and less Salvadorans are making the trip north. So they're actually loving President Bukele because he's helping them with a big problem that they have at the southern border. And they are now rooting for other countries to do the same, to follow in the Bukele model, and this would stem the number of migrants who are crossing the southern border. Number two, to your point, it is a struggle. We are dealing with the IMF. So the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, is, John Perkins wrote about this in his Confessions of an Economic Hitman, which he worked for the bankers and the IMF. And when a Southern American country or Central American country did something that the bankers on Wall Street didn't like, they would send in the economic hitman, and they would, in fact, throw him out of an airplane, the leader of that country, et cetera. And the history is replete with examples of this. It's not debated. This is exactly what they do and have been done. Today, we've got the IMF fulfilling that role. It's trying to get as many countries in the world to get on the U.S. dollar. Donald Trump said last week that he's going to go after countries that stop using the dollar. And so they're very nervous. They're very nervous about the fact that the dollar is losing world reserve currency. There's nothing they can do about it. But, with the IMF, President Bukele has pretty much gone toe to toe, let's say, with the IMF. And he's in the process now of exiting the IMF. So the economy is growing sufficiently without the IMF's help. Thank you very much. The balance sheet of the country, by the way, the balance sheet of El Salvador, the country has hundreds of millions of dollars, close to $1 billion in Bitcoin. They're putting Bitcoin on their reserves, which helps them grow outside of all this fiat money madness. So not only do they use it as day-to-day legal tender, but the country itself has put Bitcoin on their balance sheet. We have an adopting El Salvador passport program. People are sending us $1 million in donation to get a El Salvadoran passport within 2 weeks. And then that money goes into Bitcoin. We've got some other financial kind of architecting that's going on, which is favoring Bitcoin. So that not only is the country have Bitcoin as legal tender, but it'll become a fully reserved Bitcoin country, which means that it'll be potentially the richest country in the world, because all these other countries are going to die into fiat money madness. They're all throwing this. Let me tell you, El Salvador is the next Singapore. And the GDP here is going to triple in the next 5, 6, 7 years. This is the place to be, Jimmy. The U.S. is a fucking shithole. I mean, if you want to waste your time in that godforsaken hellhole, have at it. But if you want to be part of the revolution where people are optimistic and building the future and there's economic freedom and freedom of speech, there's only one country in the world, and that's El Salvador. Get on a plane, come on down here. We'll set you up with a podcast. We got a beautiful studio. Taste freedom. I will baptize you in the Pacific Ocean and turn you into a Bitcoin maximalism. I have that role here. I'm the high priest of Bitcoin in El Salvador. And I will baptize you in the waters of the Pacific and Bitcoin Beach, and you will start, you and Steph, a future of optimism, and leave that godforsaken, fentanyl, rattled, idle shithole behind, Jimmy. He hates corruption. And he's told the Attorney General to investigate every minister in the country for any corruption or wrongdoing, and if he finds any, put him in jail. Because it's a drag on the economy, and it's not good for the country. And the people that gave him an 87% vote in the last election, just a few months ago, this is what they demand. President Bukele serves the people. The people want no more corruption, so he's going to get rid of anybody who is corrupt. He got rid of the gangsters. Let's hope that the president continues in doing his job. I think that if you look at the folks, the enemy, the U.S., the CIA, the FBI, like the CIA can't even do a coup anymore. Like I think they tried a coup in Venezuela now twice in the last 10 years.
Yes.
And they failed. Like they're completely inept. Like the CIA from the 60s and 70s that we remember, they're gone. It's now a bunch of fumbling jackasses who are smoke pot and watch porn all day. Like they're just like fat slobs. They don't know shit. So they don't even know how to do a coup anymore. They just get free money from the Fed and they just go down to the porno shop and they smoke a bong. They're like completely worthless. So they're in a fiat money standard. And within the U.S. government, I call it the fifth column. You now have senators and congresspeople in the U.S. government that are Bitcoiners. So that's our fifth column. There's a soft coup in America right now by Bitcoiners who are in the U.S. government right now, like Cynthia Lummis of Wyoming. She's a Bitcoin maximalist. She's part of the fifth column. She's a Bitcoiner. And now every single day you hear, I think Rand Paul is a Bitcoiner. Ted Cruz is a Bitcoiner. It tends to be more on the conservative side for sure, but it's foolishly because Bitcoin to me is a leftist paradise. Everything the left complains about, you can solve it with Bitcoin. But but nevertheless, so this is all being mobilized within the government. So the U.S. government is collapsing. The fiat money world is collapsing. I don't think they'll have the wherewithal to do these types of things anymore. They're a spent force. They just don't have it anymore. And it's just we can't think of them like we do like from the 70s. Really, it's a clown show. It's a clown car. They don't know how to fucking whip their way out of a paper bag. They suck.
That's Max Keiser offering his take on the current state of affairs. He holds the view that the global financial system is on the brink of collapse, and sees Bitcoin as a beacon of hope. Keiser finds significance in El Salvador's adoption of Bitcoin, interpreting it as a testament to its potential. Moreover, he notes that central banks' apprehension towards Bitcoin serves as further evidence of its growing influence as the US dollar's supremacy diminishes. Keiser envisions Bitcoin as the future of money, emphasizing its ability to provide financial freedom and stability in an increasingly uncertain world. He believes that Bitcoin offers a way out of the impending collapse of the traditional financial system, presenting itself as a resilient alternative in times of instability. Keiser's perspective underscores the transformative role he believes Bitcoin will play in shaping the future of global finance. For more Daily Dose Crypto news, check out these 2 awesome videos on your screen. Click now and we will see you on the next video.